This is Gemar Nedarim Daf Chof Ches. We pick it up on the bottom of Chof Zayin Amud Beis. Firstly, a little bit of a public service announcement. I thank those who reached out. There was a issue with the website ccdaf.org. Baruch Hashem, we have fixed it. It wasn't showing the right shirim on Nedarim. It was showing Ksubis. So I thank those that reached out. And if there's ever an issue, please feel free to reach out so we can rectify those issues as soon as possible. And as well, I thank those who reach out regarding sponsorship of the Daf. Emir Tashem, looking forward to continuing sharing and spreading Torah together. Anyone else, please feel free to contact us. And we pick it up on the bottom of Chav Zayin Amud Beis. Nedarim lahargin. And the truth is a little bit of a backstory to this Mishnah, because the Mishnah just begins Nedarim. One makes a neder lahargin, to one who is trying to kill him, lacharmin, to one who's trying to take away his property, ulemoichsin, or to a tax collector. And what is the neder that he makes? Shehi truma. He makes a neder that some of his property is truma, aval b'sheinai truma, even though it's not truma, or she'ein shal beis hamelech, or he makes an neder that these items belong to the king, aval she'ein shal beis hamelech. So the backstory over here really is seen most easily in the Mefarish over here, again taking the place of Rashi, that says the hargin, that someone's coming to kill someone, Rahman al-Islan, on monetary matters, and because he wants to save the item, he says that it is Truma, Neder Za'alayim Einoi Shal Truma, and the person says, I don't believe you. So he makes a Neder that belongs to Truma in order to prevent this dangerous person from taking the item away from him. Or he makes a Neder that it is of the Beis HaMelech. Again, all these cases to avoid the tax collector, the murderer, or someone trying to take his property. So what is the status? And of course, this is a direct segue of the previous Mishnah that dealt with Nidrei Oinsim, a neder that is beyond one's control. And this is a very similar scenario. It's not fully beyond one's control, but in a similar way, it's beyond his control that he was forced to make such a neder. So says the Mishnah, we have a machlokes. Beis Shammai oimrim bachol nedarim. Says Beis Shammai, you're allowed to make any type of neder. You want to prove that this item is not yours, so the guy doesn't take it. You're allowed to say whatever form of neder you want. And we turn over to Chav Chesam and Aleph. Chutz mi b'shvua. Says Beis Shammai, whatever form of neder you would like to say, you're allowed to say. However, says Beis Shammai, you cannot say that the item is, you cannot say a shvua with regard to an item. The allowance to save yourself is only with regard to nidarim and not with regard to making a shvua. And the reason being, the Tabran points out that shvuos are more chamer, because it says, Abaye shvua lo yinakeh, that Hashem will not cleanse, Hashem will not exonerate one who makes a false shvua. Continues the Mishnah that Beis Hillel argues, Beis Hillel oimrim af b'shvua, you're even allowed to make a shvua. Continues the Mishnah on the second line of Chav Chesam and Beis Shammai oimrim, says Beis Shammai, Lo yiftach lo beneder. In a similar way, Beis Shammai being more machmir, says Beis Shammai, you cannot open up. You cannot make the neder on your own. If the robber, if the guy who's coming to take your stuff forces you to make a neder, that's one case. But says Beis Shammai, you cannot go on your own and make the neder to save the property. Beis Hillel Aimrim says Beis Hillel af yiftach la. No, if the whole reason, if the impetus that you're doing this is to save your property, you're even allowed to be paiseach, even allowed to do it without him asking. Beis Shammai Aimrim number 3, b'mashu ma'diroi, says Beis Shammai, with regard to that which he says you could be madir. If the guy's taking your car, you could say that the car is not mine, but rather it's a Beis HaMikdash. What's the contrast? And then we'll get clarity. Beis Hillel Aimrim, no. You're even allowed to make an neder with something that he's not trying to take from you. And explains the Mishnah, for example, Ketzad Amar Loi, the person, the robber says, Omer, Koine mishti nenes li, make a neder of my wife from having benefit from me. Vaymer, and he says, Koine mishti ubanai nehenimli. The robber wants to prove that what he's saying is true. So he says, forbid your wife to benefit from yourself if this item is not truma. Again, the robber comes over and is trying to take my car. I tell him, I'm sorry, it's not my car, it belongs to the Kayin. He says, really? Prove it to me. Say that if it's not the Kayin's, you're not getting any benefit from your wife. And the man responds that not only does he make a neder from his wife, he makes a neder from his son, he adds on another person. So Beis Shammai says, Ishtay mutares, the wife which was that which the person forced him is mutter, but Ubanav Asurin. Says Beis Shammai, you can't add on another entity into your neder, whereas Beis Hillel Oimrim, this is obviously the application of Beis Hillel saying you're allowed to add on whatever you want to the neder. Elu ve'elu butarin, they are both mutter, because they're both clearly only being made to save the item from the from the robber, etc. We continue into the Gemara, says the Gemara, or I shall say, asks the Gemara. V'amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, Dina de Malchusa, Dina. Ask Shmuel on the very premise of our Gemara. And the Ran explains in the first narrow line, how can you make a neder? The whole premise is the tax collector is coming to take your stuff and you say you're making a neder. How can you say that? Explains the Ran, to make yourself pater, given them in adin. If the government says you have to pay medina. Medina de Taira. Because Dina de Malchusa, Dina asks the Gemara. Back into the Gemara, Rav Chanam, Rav Kana, Shmuel. We only say a very important rule. We only say dina de malchusa dina when it's a lawful din. But if it's a moiches she'ein la kitzva, as the Ran explains, that such a, it's chamsanusa, they're just grabbing from you. Such a thing is not a din, it's not appropriate, the government's just taking too much. Such a scenario, we do not apply dina de malchusa dina. Devei Rav Yanei Amar, and the Yeshiva Rav Yanei, they add on, but moiches ha'oimin me'elav. That what's talking about over here is not that the government is taking from you, it's a self-appointed tax collector. He's not coming, shaloi b'mitzvahs hamelech. The king did not appoint him to do such, and therefore the rules of Dina de Malchusa Dina do not apply. We continue in the Gemara, about 4 lines into the Gemara, 10 lines into this Amr, Chav Chesam and Aleph by the 2 dots. Shehein shall beis hamelech v'avil b'sheina shall melech. The person says these items belong to the king, even though in reality they did not belong to the king. Asks the Gemara, Heichi nadar, how does he make such a neder? What is the way in which he makes the neder? Amrav Amram Amarav Be'oimer Ye'asru Peiros Oilam Alai. All the peiros in the world should be forbidden from me. If it doesn't belong to the king, again, the man is trying to take my car. The man is trying to take my object. And I say, it's not mine. And he says, make an neder. I say, great, these items belong to the king and I'm answering everything if these items don't belong to the king. Says the Gemara, 1 second, Kiman Damar Yasru, Israelite. If he indeed said such a language, then the halacha is that it's indeed aser. Answer, Kol Peri Dalma. All the peiros in the world, if he said such an open-ended wordage, then everything is indeed going to become forbidden. Answers the Gemara, Baimer Hayoim. He doesn't say that it's going to be forbidden forever. He said it'll be forbidden today. Says the Gemara, then the whole thing is out the window. The whole reason is that you're trying to show the tax collector it's not mine. Says the Gemara. So if the man says, and I'm going to prove it's not mine. I'm going to prove it's not mine because it belongs to the king. Hayoim. Today, says the Gemara, Shkoyach. The guy's going to realize that you're pulling shtick. Answers the Gemara, Ba'oimer beliboy. Hayoim, in his heart, he's thinking that I'm answering all the fruit of the world on myself today. But he just says, stam, would all be aser. So what's the chiddush of the Mishnah? Normally the klal is, words in your heart are nothing. If you think one thing, but you say something else, we go with the words that you articulate. That which you verbalize. I thought something different. I don't care. Go jump in a lake. Dvarim shebalev ein dvarim. But over here, the chiddush is legabe oinsin shiny. That since it's regarding an oines, the halacha is going to be different. So the chiddush of the Mishnah, the Gemara is going to be then a scenario which he thinks one thing in his heart, he says something else. Even though normally we do not accept such a story. Over here we will, due to the oines, due to the tax collector, the robber, etc. And now we continue by quoting the lengthy end of the Mishnah. Beishami Yomer b'chol v'chulu. Beishami Yomer b'mashu madira. Beishami said he can only make a neder with that which the man tells you to. Beisil oimrim av b'sheina madira. Keitzan, again, this is all a quotation of the end of the Mishnah. Amr l'kayna Mishnah nanis leave. Amr kana Mishnah ubanai. Then Ali adds on the son. Beishami Yomer Mishnah mutaris banavosur. Beisil oimrim elu ve'elu mutarim. Says the Gemara at the two dots, 20 lines before the end of Chav Chesam and Aleph, Amar Rav Huna Tana. We learned in the Mishnah, Beishami Omrim Lo Yiftach Lo Bishvua. Says Beishamai, one should not on his own go and make a shvua, whereas Beisila Omrim Af Yiftach Lo Bishvua, you can even do that. You can even be Beiseach Bishvua. And again, this is the first cousin of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Beishamai said you can make a neder, but not a shvua. You could be Beiseach if he tells you to, but you can't do it on your own. Says Rav Huna, quoting another brisa, that Beishamai extends it one step further. Lo yiftach loy. What does it mean you can't go on your own? That's about a shvua. And Beisil says even that you can say in your own. So ask the Gemara Beishamai shvua udeloy. From this brisa, what does it seem? The diak, the implication of this brisa is that only b'shvua udeloy yiftach loy. Ha b'neder yiftach loy. But the obvious question is, in our Mishnah, Beishamai said you cannot do that. So, and furthermore, on the second gasha, from the Brisa of Miftach Udula Pasach B'Shvua, it sounds like you only can be Beisach B'Shvua. Ha Meidar Nadar. But it sounds like you can, yes, be Beisach B'F a Nadar. Ha Meidar Nadar, B'Shvua. But you could be Meidar with a shvua. Beishamai clearly said not that way. So ask the Gemara a twofold question from the Brisa onto our Mishnah. And answers the Gemara, perhaps, I don't want to call it an obvious teretz, but answers the Gemara, Tani Mas Nisan, Ben Adil Diakoich the Beishamai, Tani Brisa Bishvul Diakoich the Beis Hillel. So the Gemara is answering, don't be medayik the Brisa and say the implication is not. No, the Brisa is its chiddush and the Mishnah is its chiddush. The Mishnah is a chiddush according to Beishamai with regard to another you could be paiseach. The Brisa has its chiddush according to Beis Hillel with a shvua. Teretz number 1. Teretz number 2. Rav Ashi Amar Hachi Ketani. Beishamai Omrim Ein She'ela B'Shvua. Beis Hillel Omrim Yesh She'ela B'Shvua. It's a separate din, says Rav Ashi. The Brisa is coming to teach us that there's no din of She'ela by a Shvua. That is what the Brisa meant, but not a regular din about being Paiseach in a case of someone forcing you to go and make the Shvua or the Neder by yourself. We continue the Mishnah on the bottom of Chav Chesam and Aleph. So it says these saplings, these little trees, are a carbon if Einon Niksasais, they're not cut down. So as long as these items are not cut down, they're going to be a carbon. The opposite. They're going to be a carbon if they're not cut down. So if they're going to be cut down, then they're not a carbon. Talazu carbon. Similarly, a bird says his house is going to be carbon given to Beis HaMikdash and made on Israfes. If it's not burnt up, so again, but if it's going to be burnt up, it will not be given to Beis HaMikdash. Yeshla and Pidyon, says the Mishnah, Yeshla and Pidyon, in all these items, if the conditions are fulfilled, what does that mean? That means that the items are indeed given to the Beis HaMikdash. You have to go and redeem them, meaning they're given to the Beis HaMikdash. Now, why the Mishnah chooses to say Yishla and Pidyon and doesn't just say Areza Kadesh, that it belongs to the Beis HaMikdash, we'll see in the Gemara in a moment. Similarly, continues the Mishnah, if someone says these netiyos should be given to the Beis HaMikdash until they are cut down. Talzu carbon ad shetisreif. This towel should be a carbon, should be given to Beis HaMikdash until it is burnt. Ein lahen pidyon. Then in such a scenario, there is no way of redeeming such an item, and they are not property of the Beis HaMikdash. And we continue on Chav Chesam and Beis There we go. We continue on. Chav Chesem Beis asks the Gemara, V'lisni kedushais, vein kedushais. Why does the Mishnah, as we just point out about pidyon? It says that it's not going to be a pidyon. It is going to be a pidyon. You have to redeem it. You don't have to redeem it. Ask the Gemara, I don't understand. Why doesn't it say, is it yes kadosh or is it not kadosh? It is belonging to the Beis Hamikdash or it is not. Answers the Gemara, since the Mishnah wanted to teach that in the Seifa, Ein La'en Pidyon, Taninami Reisha, Yesh La'en Pidyon. So in classical parallelism, like the Mishnahs always like to be, because the Seifa said Ein La'en Pidyon, the Reisha says Yesh La'en Pidyon. Asks the Gemara on the first case, Heichi Nadar. What was case number one? The Mishnah said that he takes this little tree, and one says that this item is going to belong to the Beis Hamikdash on condition that it's not going to be cut down, that it's not going to fall. Asks the Gemara, I don't understand. Heichi Nadar. How can he make such a neder? Everything eventually is going to fall, and therefore there's no way that his condition could be met. What was his condition? It's only Beis Hamikdash. If what? If it doesn't fall, says the Gemara, everything eventually dies. Everything eventually is going to fall. So Amar HaMeimer on the third line of Chav Chesem Beis, he puts a time limit and the day passes. Ask the Gemara, Pshita. If that's the case, that's obviously obvious. Answers the Gemara, says the Gemara, you know what the Chiddush is? There's a big wind. So Mishnah is teaching us that although when you made the neder, you thought that the tree is going to fall down, you thought that the wind is going to take down the tree, still the chiddush of the Mishnah is if lamaisa does not fall, then that which you said comes into effect, and then yes, it is indeed belonging to the Beis Hamikdash. And the Gemara proves. We see the same thing by talis, that it says v'talis l'sreifa. We see similarly by a talis. Now ask the Gemara, v'talis l'sreifa kaime. What does that mean? What's the equation? Sadly to the talis is going to be randomly burnt up. Says the Gemara, you know why? Seem hechatimsa. Just like we're creating the first case in the Mishnah as one with a big wind that you think is going to fall. Kigoin deika deleka. The seif is referring to as a fire. So you think it's going to be burnt up. And it's teaching me if it's not burnt up, then it's going to belong to Beis Hamikdash. There's a large wind. You would think that it's not going to be safe in the fire. It's not going to fall. You would think it's going to yes be burnt up, it's going to yes fall. Kamash Malon, that if it doesn't get burnt up, if it doesn't fall, then the halacha is going to be, it's going to belong to Beis Hamikdash. And we're going to pick up from the two dots the next year, B'siyata Dishmayo.